Okay, we good? Okay. Well, good afternoon or good morning, depending upon where you're at in the world. Normally, as Lisa and I would begin this off, I would have some sort of opening comments, but seeing as how this is our last virtual town hall with everyone, I'm going to save my comments for the end on there. So we'll go ahead and get to the questions today. And the first question is from Daniel off of Facebook.
What is the biggest challenge you see for USSOCOM military personnel and their families in the next 5 years or 10 years?
Well, Daniel, I have no doubt that people expect some great, wise, crystal ball words of wisdom out there. But frankly, the challenges that will face SOCOM over the next 5 to 10 years are the challenges that we've faced over the last 5 to 10 years. At the end of the day, this community is the nation's problem solvers, and we're going to be asked to do all sorts of things all over the globe. I think probably the most immediate challenge within the next 24 months or so is going to be our current reaction to various crises around the world. Some of the questions later on today pertain to it, but we have forces deploying to Africa in support of the Ebola outbreak, as well as forces that are obviously deploying to the ISIL crisis in Iraq. I know that for the families, this has brought up probably a bit of consternation and worry when it seemed that things were going to maybe settle down, provide you with the predictability that you had been asking for. Now all of a sudden we're in crisis action mode, and many of your spouses across all the components are coming home and going, well, we thought we had this, but now I'm going to deploy and go do that. And I'd like to take this opportunity as we talk about this to remind everybody out there that, especially from the preservation of the force and family standpoint, I hope you keep in mind that that was never a promise on behalf of Commander USSOCOM, myself, Lisa, anyone else, that it would fix the crises out there. We've always understood that at the end of the day, when something pops up, it is going to be our force that will deploy. Now, the one thing that I can assure each of you as we go to sort out these most recent deployments, while there are individuals that end up breaking the purse tempo policy and other things like that, we are working hard to get that deployment and backfill cycle onto a schedule so that you can get your predictability back. But beyond that, as you look out for the 5 to 10 years, like I said, it's going to be more of the same. And that's why things such as this and our continued communication between the families and the leadership are going to be so important. As Lisa and I depart here, the incoming commander absolutely is committed to the POTF program as it exists today, not going to change anything about it. But everyone that's involved in this or either watching it, the key to success has been the two-way communication. And while we haven't gotten everything that we wanted, I think that we've made a great deal of forward progress in the last 3 years. And so as we balance the mission and balance the mission back at home to preserve the force and families, this will continue throughout the remainder of SOCOM's history to be the greatest challenge because of the force that we are and how much the nation depends on us. And I believe the next question is for you, Lisa, from JSOC.
They got to unmute themselves.
You have to unmute yourself, JSOC.
Oh, here we go. Here we go.
There we go.
It's for you. Could you share some of your thoughts about the Chris and Lisa show? And many thought that your honesty and your openness was very helpful. Do you? And if you think about it very long, would you do it again?
Thank you for the question, Sharon. I went into doing the Chris and Lisa show kicking and screaming, didn't want to do it, didn't know how it would affect other people, didn't think my story was one that really needed to be shared. As we've gone out and done it, and I've met other people, and we've started the conversation with folks, I've seen that the most important thing that we brought to the table, excuse me, is that the communication is the key. Letting people know that they're not alone, that they have similar stories, and that other people are affected even in leadership positions. How it's impacted us, it's started out hard and difficult because you're telling the story, but it also brought up issues with us because I put things away. When it starts to feel good and you start to heal yourselves, you seem to dismiss other issues or put them away in the closet and not deal with them. But the deeper we've gotten into this and the more we've talked to people, the deeper the questions have become. People have become more verbal in asking questions, and they're more involved in the communication between the two of us. So in doing that, that brought up things that I hadn't thought about in a while, and we hadn't thought about in a while, and I realized that I still had issues that I was angry about and issues that we needed to discuss in detail. And I think part of the healing for us has been the process of the Chris and Lisa show, but part of the healing has also been others sharing their experiences with me, reminding me that we're not alone in our journey as well. I feel that it has helped people, if only a handful or many. I don't know what the impact is, but I know that I get a lot of emails, I get a lot of phone calls, I get a lot of success stories, and I get a lot of sad stories. But the communication and the conversation is still going on, and that's the key. So I think it has impacted other people. It has benefited other people, and I know it's benefited us. And I appreciate that everyone has shared those experiences with us and let us share our story with them.
Okay, and another question from JSOC?
Yes. It's also for Lisa. Sorry. But with the retirement coming up, with your retirement coming up, as the spouse, you will be retiring also, but I know everything's mostly been focused on Chris. The question here is, what new projects do you see coming down the pike for you? And the other question is, will you continue to support the Soft Warriors and their families?
I would love to continue to support the Soft Warriors and their families. I don't know how I'll be able to do that. I hope there will be opportunities open. As to retirement, I'm nervous. It's another chapter in our lives that we're going to experience. I'm going to probably end up spending a lot of time retraining my husband and letting him know he's not the boss anymore. And also projects, we, with retirement, have those decisions to make, and we're renovating a home and getting that house together and trying to make it a home and trying to figure out who we are as individuals. We've been in the military so long that I think it's our way of life and our way of doing things. So changing those habits and the mindset that goes along with that, it has been a journey, and I hope that we've made an impact in what we've done with the military. I know it's made an impact on us in many ways. I just hope that we can survive being retired together, and like I said, retraining him is going to be the hardest part of the journey, probably. Okay?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Good luck.
Thanks. Thank you.
Oh, I think there was another one from JSOC there that's actually going to be for me this time.
So this question is for you, and this is Donna Marie here. Sir, October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. In light of recent high-profile events played out in the media, does SOCOM have any efforts to promote awareness and education for families to include sexual violence?
Specifically to the domestic violence issue, the frank answer is no. Not in terms of specific targeted education toward that. Having said that, though, the preservation of the force in families, whether it's domestic violence, whether it's suicide, whether it's sexual assault or sexual harassment, all of those are ultimate negative outcomes from the deeper or deeper causes of us not having, our mental, spiritual, and physical health together. So the holistic approach of POTF is intended to get at all of those things and prevent them. But the short answer to your question is there's nothing specific to the domestic violence piece that we're addressing now. And I know that probably isn't what you want to hear, but that's just the God's honest truth. So, okay. Oh, awesome. Another question from Mrs. Faris from NSW, California.
I think we're on. Can you hear us? Hi, Lisa. First of all, we want to thank you for the, your sharing your personal story with so many people. I think it's touched a lot of, not just NSW, but everybody in SOF. Not even SOF, I mean, everybody else. Anyway, our question here is, since you're preparing to retire, and we want to find out, is there something that you can say, consider, I wish, things that you wish that you knew then, what I know now, type of thing that you can share with us?
I think the thing that I wish that I knew then was I didn't have to know all the answers. I thought that we had to behave a certain way and act a certain way. They told us who we could, all the OPSEC that goes along with things, that becomes kind of a container that keeps you locked inside. And I don't think that you can have the growth that you need as a spouse or as a support to your spouse or your community. I think if you have confidence in yourself and know that each step of the journey is something that you're going to learn something new and take with you, and you're going to mess up and you're going to make mistakes, that's okay. The fact that you're not alone and you have those around you that you can turn to and look at and say, this is hard, this is difficult, are you struggling, are you happy, are you sad, all of those things, and that if you keep a communication open between you and your peers, and start talking about things and learning from each other instead of feeling like you have to behave a certain way and look a certain way and look like this person or look like the other, I think it hinders you from the growth and your potential to be a leader no matter what your position is. I think if you just if you're yourself, have confidence in yourself, and just move out and move on and do what you need to do to succeed and admit when it's hard, that's the best tools you can take with you, and learn as you go and just support those around you. Always look out for those around you, because you never know. I tell it in our story all the time. Somebody might come up to you and say, how was your day? A lot of times they're not really interested. They want you to ask them. Ask them how their day is and push for the answer, because you might be the only positive communication that they have. And just support each other in a way that you know that you're never alone in this journey, because there's no answers, there's no guidebook, there's no roadmap, and just lean on each other and know that you're going to be okay and you're going to get through it as long as you've got each other.
Okay, Miss Ivy, I think we got another question from y'all out there.
Yes.
Good morning, I'm Laura Lynn. Our question is actually for Chris. Do you feel prepared to retire, and what would you give as any tips for someone who's a year or two out from your position?
Yes, I'm absolutely prepared to retire if that's what lies in the cards. I believe most of your spouses out there know that I might get another job, maybe. We'll find out later on this week. But if retirement comes, I'm ready. It's 31 years. I tell people all the time, oh my God, they come up and go, hey, are you ready? Are you this or that? And I go, yeah. I'm like one of the Olympic torch runners. Not the one that gets to enter the stadium, climb the big stairs, light the big torch in front of a billion people watching on TV. I'm the cat that ran one little leg between Thomasville, Georgia, and Opelika. Nobody remembers who that torch carrier was or anything else, and I'm good with that. We've done our time and we've done our best. If there's one thing that I would tell everybody out there, don't wait till the last minute. I had a lot of great advice on, hey, once you put your paperwork in, you don't have to wait till the day you retire to begin to do your Veterans Affairs things and other things like that. There's a terrific program that the CARE Coalition turned me on to, Mr. Lee Cuthbert out there, called Before Discharge Disability. And I'm currently in the process of doing that. I'm still 6 months out from retirement, but I've already been to the VA for my eye check. As soon as we're done here, I got to run out to the VA to get my hearing done. later this week I go and get my behavioral health assessment from the VA. But the whole point of this is take that 6 months while you're still on active duty to get all these appointments done so that they can give you a disability rating within either the day of retirement or within 30 days afterwards. We all hear the stories of you don't get disability until 9, 12 months later. And quite frankly, I'm finding out that that's probably a lick on us as the service members because we choose to do what we do. And so the thing that I would advise everyone is be proactive from the get-go. It's not that hard to get out there and get the proper briefings that you have to have and take care of yourself. I am personally torn between the guilt of, ooh, I shouldn't run out to the VA, maybe I got something to do here today. And then there's that part of me that says, no, 31 years, I'm going to take an hour for myself and set myself up for retirement. So I'm trying to exercise a little POTUS mentality on myself and behalf of my wife because I think she's less prepared for retirement than I am. So hopefully that answers your question there. Okay, so next question is from Terrence, and this is off of Facebook.
Here's my question. During training, do you have to eat bugs? It would seem logical so as people could get over it.
Well, Terrence, you don't have to eat bugs, but, I want to eat bugs. No. No, I prefer to eat MREs and other things like that, whatever's out there in the field. Now, obviously, during your survival training and whatnot, you learn what kind of bugs that you could, but you'd have to be pretty doggone hungry. So the majority of the bugs I've eaten are those that have actually flown into my food, and you eat them inadvertently rather than intentional dining upon bugs. Okay, and so with that, we'll move out to MARSOC.
Hi, Sergeant Major and Lisa. This is Jennifer from MARSOC, and I just wanted to tell you I'm sorry I missed the Chris and Lisa show. If you do an encore, please let us know because I'd like to attend. I've heard great things about it. Our question is this: with increased extremist interest in social media and targeting of military audiences, how has SOCOM changed its social media policy or guidance to SOCOM families, if at all?
That's a great question. I think the one thing that we have to be careful of is you hear a lot in the media about them targeting social media. The key to exactly what you said is they would like to target military members and their families. Now, whether or not they do it through social media, that's a different story. So at the end of the day, as always, you have to be aware of your environment. Specifically to social media, though, the POTUS has begun a program working with our J3 identity management here at SOCOM to put out through your POTUS contacts as well as some of the FROs out there a smart book on social media. And really what the smart book is, sort of the do's and don'ts that I think we all instinctively understand as we try to protect our identities, not just from a terrorist threat, but you try to protect your identity from identity thieves and fraud. But this smart book will contain things of how to do the settings in Facebook to close it up, this, that, and the other. So we are hitting the road with a POTUS on that. There's not going to be a big, giant thing from SOCOM in terms of all hands, but our teams will be educating your teams in the components for dissemination down to you. From a policy standpoint, you've got to understand the only thing that we control are obviously the governmental things. You can't put a policy out to limit families. That's one good thing about our country. You still have the freedom and right to do that, to be out there. But at the end of the day, it is a threat. But you've just got to be, careful. But at the same time, don't let them win and restrict your freedoms out there. So help is coming, but there won't be a policy per se as much as that. Like I said, this guidebook to help you through the process of how to make your social media safe. Okay, and next question from MARSOC, please.
Hi, I'm Christy at MARSOC. Our next question. Global events suggest SOCOM forces will be deployed in places where the risk may be in the shape of plague in addition to enemy forces. How has SOCOM planned for health risk issues to our deployed forces?
This is a great question because we do have forces that are going to be deploying as a part of the Ebola task force. The overall program for the training and monitoring of all forces is being done at the DoD level. Now, don't let that dishearten you because it went up to a higher level thing, but obviously all of the infectious disease specialists and expertise reside at, for example, the Army Medical Command and other things like that. So just this last week, there was what they call a tank session, meaning the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and all the service chiefs got a brief on how they're going to be dealing specifically with the forces that are deploying to West Africa for the Ebola. And they're categorizing the troops into 4 levels. So level 1 are those troops that, based upon their duty assignment overseas, will be at the least amount of risk. And let me give you an example. So there's a forward staging base that will support the folks that are deploying. Perhaps a spouse is part of the logistics effort or something like that that will never leave the base and will not truly come into contact with those that are affected. They're level 1, and they will go through a certain level of training. Level 2 are those forces that will be out amongst the populace, which I think many of our military information support operations operators will be doing, as well as our civil affairs will be doing. And so they'll be out not specifically working the Ebola, but helping with the messaging or helping with the mil-to-civ operations that are out there. But they're at a higher risk for exposure. And they have to go through, again, this AMED level 2 type training. Level 3 are those troops, and I don't see our forces being a part of this, and you've got to understand this Ebola task force is going to be almost 4,000 people. Those troops that may be handling remains of Ebola patients, and they obviously get a different level of training. And then level 4 are those that will actually be working in labs with the virus itself, and they'll be in the full suits and the whole 9 yards. So each level of troop will get their level of training. They're getting minimum equipment issued to them, and I won't bore you with that long list. But additionally, prior to redeployment, as they go through about what they did during the deployment, what their risk to exposure was, they can be held in country in isolation for a 10-day period before redeploying, because as you know, Ebola, you can have it, but it takes about 2 weeks for the symptoms to show up. So they've chosen this 10-day period. And then additionally, every troop that comes back to the States will go through additional monitoring. For me personally, I'm very comfortable with the steps that they're taking. Now, having said that, there's a lot in the papers and in the media about Ebola. And while I'm not discounting the threat of Ebola, at the same time, I think it's important for all of us to keep this in perspective. So Ebola is a virus that's transmitted through contact with bodily fluids. About 4,000 people globally have died so far in this current outbreak. And it has a pretty high death rate, about 70% that contract it. But keep in mind, HIV is also a virus, and it's also transmitted through contact with bodily fluids. 36 million people have died from HIV. And HIV is just as prevalent in Africa, where we have deployed numerous times before. So, I'm not poo-pooing what's going on in the current crisis. I'm not poo-pooing what's going on with the current task force that's going to deploy. But at the same time, I think that we need to keep it in perspective about how it's transmitted and what our troops will actually be coming in contact with as we go over there and try to help them. I do think that the mission is a worthy mission, because if you're going to stop an outbreak, you've got to stop it at its source by trying to stop it as it begins to move into the country. Hopefully that answers your question. And with that, we'll go to a video question from Angela at Stockton.
Chris and Lisa, you've both done such an amazing job reaching out to service members and their families and making a difference through awareness. Thank you so much for all that you've done by sharing your military marriage experience and by being such wonderful and positive mentors. You just keep giving, and you're always there for others. Unfortunately, I do think there is a definite decline in volunteering and overall participation among the military and their families, mostly due to fatigue and burnout, but also because of negative experiences or stereotypes. So my question is, what advice could you offer to spouses to help encourage involvement in their service members' unit so that an example can be set for new spouses and we can continue to be a great community that leans on and is there for each other? Thanks, guys.
Okay, I think, Angela, you hit on a couple of things in your question there where you talked about burnout and stereotypes. And with the burnout comes apathy, with stereotypes comes cynicism. And apathy and cynicism will never change until you step up and you want to change those. We've all been in organizations where from a family, volunteer, want to get involved standpoint have either been hindered by cynicism or apathy. And only an excitement can change those from the negatives that they are to the positives that they should be. And it's going to take the spouses, like all of you that are participating, you're taking time out of your schedules to come and ask us questions, to participate in this virtual town hall. Well, how do you energize and give them the energy that you have to take your time to do this? Only you know the answers to those, but it's going to take that groundswell of holding, everybody's heard me say this, hold your chain of command responsible. I get on to commanders all the time when they say, yes, I communicate with the families all the time. And I ask them, oh, okay, tell me how you communicate. Well, I send them an email. Okay, stop. It's not about email. It's about face-to-face. You've got to have that communication. And so as you talk about burnout and as you talk about stereotypes, every organization that's experiencing those, rather than acquiescing to those attitudes, need to peel that onion back and ask the question, how did we get to the point that these stereotypes, cynicism, and apathy have taken hold of our organization? And once you answer those, you've found the root causes of what needs to be changed. And then you have to attack each of those individually based upon your organization and the culture of your component or whatever the case may be. And one other note on this, while that may still exist out there, I hope that everybody in this audience recognizes, like Lisa and I do, especially as we have traveled as much as we have, we're in a much better place than we were 3 years ago. Boy, you want to talk about some apathy, burnout, and some stereotyping that was going on. Hats off to every one of you out there that challenged myself, Lisa, Admiral McCraven, Georgianne McCraven. As we went around 3 years ago for those first all hands, there was not a single place we didn't go that one of you spouses didn't stand up and go, hey, we hear you talking the talk, now let's watch you walk the walk. And I think between the initiatives that we've done here at Tampa and what y'all have done in the organizations, we've made a great deal of progress. We've got a great deal of momentum. And please don't let that stall. Carry on that momentum. Finish crushing the last bits of apathy and stereotyping out there, and rather than what's going on today, while it's the norm, it's got to be the norm that survives in perpetuity beyond changes in personality at leadership levels. It's just got to become the day-to-day business of this command. So thank you very much for the question.
I'm going to jump in there,
okay.
Too. One of the things that we don't utilize, and you said something about getting new spouses involved, they come in with an energy that a lot of us don't have, and I think we don't utilize that resource enough. We don't encourage them to get involved because we're so used to doing things business as usual that we don't open our minds at times to new ideas and new experiences. We've got to stop thinking as a whole that we know everything and start working together as a whole instead and bringing new ideas into our norm. Changing the culture of the way we used to do things. I mean, it's kind of like people always asked us, what was it like when Chris came back? Well, I always expected him to come back and for us to, my husband to come back the way he was. It's the same with our communities. We can't do things the way we used to because we're a different organization than when we started. So taking on new ideas, taking on the enthusiasm, the excitement of new spouses that might have broader ideas, that might get us excited again, might get us involved again, I think that's impactful. Another thing, we base our success on the number of people that show up for something. If we have 5 people show up for something, we think it's a failure. But it might be those 5 people that needed to be there for that instant to encourage them, and we don't know what seeds they're going to plant to get other people involved. So I think we need to change our way of thinking and start expanding our way of thinking and taking on new ideas to see how we can grow by challenging ourselves to do things different and not status quo. And I think that would encourage more people to get involved, and that will naturally take care of, the old belief system that, the wives club is something that's a gossiping this, that, or the other, instead of this community is something that gets involved and takes care of their families.
Okay. Over to Amy at AFSOC.
Hi there. It's difficult to overstate the positive effects POTUS has had on the families in the SOC community. Yet, as you know, there's much left to be done. We keep hearing rumors about funding and services changing in the upcoming years. Can you talk about things that help sustain and expand its family and resiliency services?
Yeah, there are some aspects of the POTUS program that, frankly, Congress is questioning whether or not it's SOCOM's role to do. And, this gets into the nuances of U.S. Code, Title 10, and the various subcodes of it that state what our money is supposed to be spent on. And there is a valid argument, in my opinion, when Congress says, well, you're spending money on this, isn't that an Army, Air Force, Navy, or Marine Corps responsibility to do so? And the answer is yes, but they're not meeting the SOF-specific needs. And as Admiral McCraven had stated, and as General Votel continues to state, our validity for spending these funds is because readiness is our #1 issue. If our ultimate mission is to be charged with training, preparing, and fielding the Department's Special Operations Forces, then readiness is a piece of that, and the family is a piece of that. I haven't said come to a lot of agreements. So, for example, last year, for this year's budget, we had requested X tens of millions of dollars for behavioral health. Congress said, okay, we'll give you the money, but we're going to actually give it to the Undersecretary of Defense for Health, and they will execute it on your behalf. And that's fine with us. If Congress wants, from an oversight standpoint, for the funds to be given someone else, as long as they're executed on behalf of you and the families, then we're okay with that. So we're going through different machinations of those. Now, one of the things that's going to help as we move forward into the future, and right now the POTUS Directorate here at SOCOM is working on them, but we've spent a lot of money on POTUS, and many of you took the survey. The survey was very positive in its responses, but we've got anecdotal data of how positive the effect has been. And unfortunately, we're going to have to come up with something a little more empirical. And so right now we're trying to develop measures of effectiveness and measures of performance that can go forward and show the validity of the dollars that are being spent. At the end of the day, despite these machinations that are going on in Congress, I think we are going to be very well served. In terms of changes internal to SOCOM, General Votel is 100% committed to preservation of the force and families the way that it exists today. I believe him and Michelle would be doing their first virtual town hall in about 2 months after we do this one, and I encourage all of you to ask both of them the similar questions. But right now, from a SOCOM standpoint, we are not going to change anything. We will continue to fight to get what it is that we need. We know the validity of the program, but we're going to have to start proving it after the tens and tens of millions of dollars we spent over the last 3 years and the even increased funds that we're asking for in the out years. So, Amy, I hope that answers your question, and I believe we'll go to Julie there next to you.
Hi. I just wanted to get your opinion on if you think the POTUS program is working the way it was designed, and do you think any improvements need to be made with it?
I'm sorry, you asked if the POTUS program?
Yes, if the POTUS program is working the way it was designed to,
yeah.
And what improvements do you think need to be made?
That's a very good question from the standpoint of 3 years ago when the Admiral, implemented this. I believe we told all of you, he and I were not one that wanted to study a lot of things, because you can study something to the point of ad nauseum where you end up absolutely doing nothing. And so when we rolled out the preservation of the force and families, it was an absolute admission that it was not 100%, that our best guess was probably about 70% right. 3 years looking back on it, I am more than pleased with where we're at. But this gets back to my earlier comment. Your involvement at the components has made it what it is today, because we were just throwing, darts in the dark at the dartboard. But I think once you, the family, saw that we were serious about walking the walk as well as talking the talk, your energy and your feedback through your POTF reps, through your FROs, through your FRG coordinators, have made the program much better than I anticipated it would be after 3 years. So I think that we're definitely making headway. I would have to say that given the point in time right now, we're probably at about a 90% solution. Now, the improvements that need to go forward, frankly, I think are the tweaks on the margins. But that tweaking is very unit specific, it's very location specific, it's very component specific. And again, POTF is not about SOCOM having the 8,000-mile-long screwdriver to tell you how to fix yourselves. So this constant feedback and dialogue about what you need has got to continue with Tampa. And as you bring your needs forward, while some things may get delayed because we've got to fight up on the Hill or within the department itself to make our case valid, to get the things that you need, we've got a very good staff here in Tampa that continuously makes those cases. So the tweaks on the margins have still got to be done, but that is going to come from you to Tampa, and so please keep up the energy, keep up the commitment, and keep up the conversation. And okay, over to Lisa at AFSOC.
Hey, I just wanted to first thank you both for all that you've done generously and transparently for the SOC community, just in recognizing gaps in marriages and family communication. You humbly bring added value to all things POTF and will certainly be missed. So thank you. As deployments continue, will the two of you continue to travel and share the Chris and Lisa show for the POTF program, or do you plan to pass the torch?
Okay, so you're trying to nail us down on something that we're not necessarily prepared to be nailed down on. All right, so later this week I'm going to travel up to Washington, D.C. because I am a nominee to be Sergeant Major of the Army. I don't know how that'll go. If I get it, then obviously I've got another job to do that will consume our time, and so no, we would not be able to continue the Chris and Lisa story on the road. Having said that, if I retire, and it would be unethical to presume anything, but as I've talked with your FROs and other things like that, the thing that Lisa and I won't have is that ability to get those good government travel orders anymore. And while we're not out to make a buck off of our story, in no way, shape, or form will my retirement or any job that I have afterwards enable us to do the type of travel schedule that we did to do it. I think we definitely want to stay involved in the community. We don't mind doing the story and continuing it, but there's too many unanswered questions in our life right now for me to sit here today and make a 100% commitment to you. And I know that's probably not much of an answer, but sorry.
But one of the things that Chris and I, and Lisa, I know you've heard us say this before, the challenge to everyone out in the community, and Chris has always said the best lessons learned are usually the difficult ones, or you draw more from that. I think it's very important that you share your experiences individually, if you can, within your community. I mean, ours is not a situation that isn't happening amongst all of you. So there's nothing stopping people from sharing their stories, and even if it's one-on-one or within their squadron, their unit, their group, just to keep the communication open and remind everyone that they're not alone in their circumstance. We're not unique. A lot of people struggle, so use those experiences to help others and remind each other that you're not alone, and carry on for us, because our story is probably old to everyone, but it's the story, and everyone has a story to share. So get out there and walk the walk with us, and that'll make this message get out farther into a larger community than what we could share individually.
Okay, and Teresa at AFSOC.
Hi, how are you today? I just wanted to be able to ask a question about the POTIF survey that I took last spring. When will we at a spouse level be able to get the results about that survey? Also, recently, there's been a big change in leadership. Will the new regime personally be visiting bases like the old ones did, or the previous ones did? And because it was really great to be able to personally connect with them.
Okay, reference the POTIF survey. First of all, thanks to everyone out there that took it. We had more participating this year than we did the first time that we took it. And the results are out, and they have been disseminated to each of the components, POTIF reps, and you should be able to get them from the from your AFSOC POTIF rep there. So that is out. Yes, I do believe the new command team will be traveling. Obviously, Command Sergeant Major Thetford will replace me tomorrow. Now, for he and Allie, he will not be back until real work until November the 3rd. He's got to get back to Fort Bragg, get packed up, moved, get settled in. We'd like a little bit of time off, just like I did when I first came into this as well. So Bill will be fully 100% on board on November the 3rd. General Votel has already begun to travel. I think Ivy Losi can tell you they had a great visit out there to NSW and Coronado, and he went up to Colorado Springs, to Norsok. So they are beginning their travels at this time. So yes, I do believe that you will see them out there. And Emily at AFSOC.
Hi, I wanted to talk about social media again. I know there has been a lot of conversation and concern in the spouse community regarding the extremist threats to our families, our military families, but Facebook has been a really useful tool in some regards as far as getting critical information to our families about storm threats and upcoming events and all manner of things. And even if we know how to upgrade our personal Facebook security, are we at an increased risk being linked to official wing Facebook pages and squadron spouse Facebook pages and all these other things?
Well, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that any association with the military at all isn't going to draw some degree of scrutiny. There's not going to be a policy outcoming about, hey, that's it, we've got to get rid of the Facebook pages that do many of the things that you're talking about in terms of passing information. It's difficult to sit here and try to describe to you targeting. Just because I might know that you're on Facebook and that you are an Air Force spouse doesn't necessarily mean that I want to target you specifically. Versus, if I were a bad person, I know that it's a lot easier to just go sit outside the front gate of Cannon and I can find lots of people, or go sit out the front gate of Fort Bragg or other things like that. So I think you have a greater threat from installation type things than worrying about whether or not someone is specifically going to find your name on social media and then from there begin to try to figure out what your address is, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So this isn't just about a threat to social media. There are all sorts of other threats that are out there. If you recall, there's a big debate when the war first began. Should we get rid of the DOD registration stickers because they obviously mark the cars, and then not everybody peels them off when they sell them, and all I can do is go find a used car with a valid DOD sticker, and I can get on it. All of that. All of that still applies. And so what you as the families have to understand is, while yes, there is an increased threat to you as military members, your personal awareness and situational awareness and your personal security is a lot more holistic than just worrying about the social media piece of it. You've got to be aware. You know, we've all seen the banners. If you've seen things suspicious, call so-and-so. I think you're at a greater threat from surveilling the front gate of Canada or someplace like that than the degree of technological hacking it would take to figure out exactly where you live as an individual and then try to target you, if that makes sense. So hopefully that answers your question. But at the same time, I believe the other part of your question, as I read it before, was there going to be any policy changes on there? There's not going to be policy changes in terms of making people get rid of those very useful web pages as much as there's going to be policy changes in terms of making them more secure so that you're not necessarily linked to them, if that makes sense. Okay? And with that, we'll go to Nicole at AFSOC.
Nicole wasn't able to be here, but I'll read her question. In lieu of budget cuts and recent world events, is the Air Force aware of the toll being placed on the active duty and their families in general, and specifically in AFSOC? If they are, what is being done about it?
Well, at the end of the day, we're going through a reduction. So, yeah, there's not a service out there that isn't aware of the impacts of the pink slips that are being issued as we reduce the forces. But at the end of the day, it's the reality of the matter. You know, here in the headquarters, we just got our first round of pink slips not too long ago, and we were also told by the Air Force that because of their total reduction, they're going to not backfill 200 billets. And, you know, I'm tracking the numbers across each of the services. So if I really understand your question, yes, all of the leadership is aware of the impacts to a force reduction. But at the same time, it's dictated by law that we do the reduction, and I do believe that each service is doing their utmost to ensure that they retain the highest quality airmen, soldiers, sailors, and Marines out there. And then service-specific, they each have their own programs for transitioning. I think the biggest fallacy that many troops have out there is, it'll never happen to me. I'm that good. And I've read quite a few articles, especially as the Army gave out their first staunch of pink slips to the officer corps this year. You know, 04s and 03s that were, oh my God, how did this happen to me? Have you ever looked at my records? Well, you know, there's a lot of good people out there. And the reduction is the reduction. And so while that may not be a very rosy answer, and it may not be the answer that a lot of people want to hear, this is just reality. And families need to be prepared rather than holding out on hope that I'll never be one of those that get reduced because I'm the one person that my service can't do without. Be prepared for it and think about those things. And there's nothing wrong with beginning to put that resume together or whatever the case may be to translate and help. But each of the services are doing the best that they can to also transition those that are being reduced and help you out there. And then if it does happen, take advantage of what SOCOM has to offer. The Care Coalition, you know, it's not just about our ill and injured, but the Care Coalition can help link you up with resume services and other things like that. And you'll also begin to see the Soft for Life initiative rolling out over the next 9 months or so. And this is going to be a very huge piece to help whether you're transitioning because of reduction or just transitioning because you choose to ETS or it's time to retire. And one of the things on the back end that we're going to do with that is there's a great many successful soft people out there in the business community, and we're going to build this coalition of business partners. They're going to help our service members do this transition piece. So we recognize what's going on with the reductions. We recognize the insecurity that's out there. The majority of that is a service responsibility, but as a lot of times as we look at what the services are doing, we from a special operations standpoint find it to be a little bit wanting, and so what can we do to be proactive with that? and Admiral McCraven and General Botel have just approved the Soft for Life initiative and have named a specific individual to head that up on behalf of the Force Management Division here. And so I think y'all will be hearing a lot more about the Soft for Life getting added on to the POTF piece of this. And next question from Lori. I believe you're out there in Cannon as well.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Cannon's School Liaison Officer position is combined with the EFMP FS component. Cannon earned an extra manpower slot for the separate EFMP position, which covers over 330 families. But due to manpower cuts, the position was lost. Cannon is considered to be an isolated or remote CONUS location, so local EFMP support can be limited. Is there any way a manpower slot could be provided in order to provide needed support in this area?
Okay, so I understand your question, but I can't answer it specifically because yes, there have been the manpower cuts. It's debated in the news whether or not we grew to 69.7 or we got reduced from 72,000 that are out there. The reason why I can't specifically answer your question, and I hope that if Mrs. Heithold is up on here, because I saw that she may be, she'll pass this on to General Heithold to get you a more specific answer, because the components controlled what got cut and what didn't cut to that specificity. Now, the other thing that I can't answer for you is obviously the military billets are different than the civilian billets. And so as the Air Force goes through its total drawdown, I don't know what the Air Force did in terms of eliminating civilian billets. I do personally believe that because you do have isolated status, that extra consideration should have been given to you. But I don't know all the thought processes that went behind. And as Wade mentioned earlier before we began, this is one of those questions that we have forwarded to AFSOC as the component to get you a more specific answer to that specific slot as to why it fell under the chopping block as it did. So probably not satisfactory, but that's the best that I can do for you. Okay, and we have about 7 minutes left, so we're going to take the last question from Heather, because I asked Wade to give myself and Lisa about 5 minutes here at the end to speak to all of you and say our farewells. So Heather?
The great program going with the use of the family support coordinators within the squadrons at our base. I'm wondering why their contract was not renewed. I realize other bases may not have used the FSC as effectively, but why do we have to use ours when it's making a huge impact on families being taken care of and welcomed to a location such as ours? I found the FSC to be one of the very best assets to our squadron and to our families. Is there any hope of getting them back?
Well, much like the previous question, frankly, I don't have the specific answer because that is an AFSOC contracting issue. And I don't know why they were cut as a part of the contracting. All I can tell you from the broader sense is every year we are required to reduce our contract costs by 10%. Now, that's not contractors per se. We spend X amount of millions of dollars per year on contracts, and it's about a dollar figure. So I don't know if just the specific contractor was cut. I don't know if the contract was cut because they did some mil to civ changes, and you're actually going to get a permanent Department of Defense Air Force civilian employee to replace them. But again, this question has been forwarded to the AFSOC change of command to get y'all a much more specific answer out there in Cannon. Okay, so we've got about 6 minutes left. This is mine and Lisa's farewell virtual town hall. For me, I just want to tell all of y'all, thank you so much for your support, not only to myself and Lisa personally, but also to the initiatives that have been out there. We have had a tremendous run over the last 3 years of being able to travel around, meet and talk with everyone. But the thing I'm most appreciative of is your candor. Your candor has made all the difference in the world. When Lisa and I would come off of the road, for me to be able to sit down and look the commander in the face and say, these are the goods, these are the bads, and this is one of those that's in between that I've just got to keep monitoring on your behalf, has made a tremendous, tremendous difference to what's been going on and our ability to try to help you and the families that are out there. I want to thank each and every one of you for your service and your sacrifice. I know that oftentimes you're told that, and that can be sometimes a trite statement. I hope all of you know myself well enough and Lisa well enough to know that I thank you from the bottom of my heart. What y'all do each and every day on behalf of this nation in support of your spouses and their mission is truly, truly the untold story of our country. So thanks to all of you. We're going to miss you. Whatever the next road or path may bring for us, but every day you will always be in our hearts and our minds and our prayers. And just God bless each and every one of you. And thank you all so much for how much you have accepted Lisa and myself.
Thank you.
Nothing to add, baby?
He said it was best for once.
She's got her box of tissues just in case she was going to cry.
I have it ready. I'm going to miss all of you. Thank you for sharing your stories, your heartfelt stories with us and opening up to us and being so welcoming. Thank you for your emails and continued support. I keep you in my thoughts and my prayers all the time. I worry about you. I just want to remind you you're not alone. My email address hasn't changed. My cell phone number hasn't changed. Please do not hesitate ever to call me. I don't care what time it is. I will continue to be here for you in whatever capacity you need, and God bless you all.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Take care.